to Mumble Beat Las Vegas. 15. Come on now. Come on now, let's hear it. This is the session that people have been talking about. Ever since we announced this, the buzz around the world has been amazing. The moment we hit the stage, the day after we hit the stage, when's it gonna happen? When's he gonna be here? This gentleman knows more about entertainment than any of us will. And he's been working in a professional way for over 20 years. He started years ago back in my state, Minnesota. Now, the reason why he's a part of this today is because of my close friend, Carl Hagerman. He and I had a conversation one day, and I said, do you think would he maybe come by and say hello? I mean, he lives in Las Vegas, we're gonna be in Las Vegas. Carl and I weren't even sure, but Carl took this on for me and for all of you. So to start this off, let's bring him out. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Carl Hagerman, come on now. Yeah.
Guys, how are ya? Before I bring Penn out on stage, I just want to acknowledge you guys for the session I had with you yesterday, and just how great it was to connect with people afterwards, and you're all really kind. And one of the things I know for sure is I don't really know what you all do, and I probably don't know as much as anybody in this room about entertainment, but I know about my life in entertainment, and it's always good to be in a room of people that kind of share the same language about being in show business. And when this happened, this event is culminating right now, started months ago. Bill called me and said, hey, I got this crazy idea, you know, you're friends with Penn, I'd be really interested in see if we could have him be part of the Mobile Beat conference in Vegas. And I called him back and said, well, let's give it a shot. And through many phone calls and a lot of emails and some help with Glenn Alai with the Penn and Teller, we were able to bring Penn in here today. So this is really an exciting thing for me. I'm not going to do a long introduction, but I do want to say this. I started with Penn in, I believe it was 1974. I was cast as a character, a wandering street character at a Renaissance festival. I was 14 years old. I came from a divorce house, and I didn't have a lot of male role models around. My single mother, I was always with her, and she was working with, women's groups. So it was always like I was around adult women all the time and not a lot of men. And then I met Penn, and I was struck right away because he's the first adult that didn't make me feel like my chosen profession early on of being a performer was a bad thing. Like being a street performer wearing makeup, he thought was just as cool as what anybody else was doing. And he also was one of the first people that swore in front of me, talked an adult way in front of me. I learned and watched him for years as a performer. I would go to the shows of first Penn. They started on a group called Asparagus Valley Cultural Society. And it was Penn, Weir, and Teller, and they did separate shows. And then they came back later as Penn and Teller, and 40 years ago, this year I believe it is, they will celebrate the anniversary of the very first Penn and Teller show that happened at the Renaissance Festival in Minnesota. And so I watched them for the longest time and would sit in the audience and watch Penn, who is a great juggler, but his ability to interact with an audience and the way he controlled the space and really created a presence in the theaters that he worked in was instrumental for me early on in becoming a speaker and a performer and being in show business and being proud of being in show business. And I eventually helped them pass the hat. We traveled together. He and I and another performer got in a car and drove down to Texas, and he turned me on to music. I wanted to say this. At the time I met Penn, I was listening to my own kind of music, which was John Denver. And I got in the car with Penn, and he brought half Japanese, the Ramones, Eddie Cochran, I'm thinking all the names, Bowie, early Elvis Costello, The Clash, all the stuff he was playing on cassette tapes in the car, going, gotta listen to this, gotta listen to this. My life never regained its original dimension after that trip. And so could not be happier today to bring my friend and kind of a big brother to me back up on the stage to share together. He and I have not been on the same stage together in 40 years. So this is a truly extraordinary thing for me. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my good friend Penn Jillette.
song. This is the song that I would sing to put my daughter to sleep when she was a little baby. As a matter of fact, she always, whenever she hears this song, it's a lullaby to her. I would sit there, put me in the wheelchair, get me to the plane, hurry, 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 before I go insane. I can't control my fingers, I can't control my brain. Whoa, 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 whoa. That's what she went to sleep to.
That's awesome. I was just realizing, sitting here with you, you remember lyrics. I mean, you remember, we were just upstairs, I know we were talking about something just upstairs, and it's like lyrics.
We were watching a friend of yours shoot up, and I remembered the lyrics to Heroin. It's not that remarkable.
Well, no. It was just a friend of mine, we're diabetic, and I'm diabetic, and she was up there giving herself some insulin.
They say they're diabetic. We don't have evidence. I didn't check what was in the needle. None of my business.
It was
none of my business. She was shooting up something backstage at the Riv.
Yes.
Could have been insulin. We don't know.
And the lyrics you brought up were?
I said, you feel just like Jesus' son when the blood shoots up the dropper's neck. I have made a very important decision. I am going to nullify my life, which is from the Velvet Underground Heroin. Lou Reed.
Well, so if you spend any time with Penn, it's like you have a soundtrack that seems to be running in your head all the time.
One time, my friends asked me, what songs I had going in my head, and for about an hour, I just said what was really going on in my head, and they finally told me to stop. That's the whole story. But it's a lot that I have. I run a lot of poetry and quotations and music through my head all the time.
As I was thinking about today, I know that you went to Ringling Brothers Clown College.
Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey, the greatest show on earth, Clown College.
Right.
Sir. Yes.
Sir, okay. And
we were fined, they had a PR course at Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey, greatest show on earth, Clown College. And we were told in the Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey, greatest show on earth, Clown College PR class that when we were being interviewed, we were not allowed to say the show or the circus or Ringling. We had to every single time say Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey, greatest show on earth, Clown College, or we would be docked. Actually, money. So you always will hear me say, if you see me on any of the little, chat shows and stuff, and they'll say, you're playing in Vegas, and I go, yeah, we're playing at the Penn and Teller Theater at the Rio Wall Suites Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Was that part of their PR campaign?
And it works.
It works.
It works. The amazing thing is that, Irvin Feld, the man who invented payola, not really the most artistic person I've ever heard about, he's actually right about something. And that is if you say the name of where you're going to be, people can go there. Well, it was insulin. It had to be insulin.
Oh, yeah. It's insulin. And
you shoot heroin backstage at the Riv.
No, it was. So you said, I read a quote somewhere that said you never wanted to be a magician. You never wanted to be a comedian. You never wanted to be on stage. And no. how did you? Okay, explain how you go from Greenville, Massachusetts.
Greenville, Massachusetts,
and to becoming sort of, I think one of the most long-running successful acts, certainly in Vegas, and probably the most successful magic act in my generation, at least. How did you get from that to here?
Well, Steve Martin said that if you desperately wanted to be in show business, didn't have any talent, you took up magic. And it sounds like a really mean, snarky thing to say, but it has a real heartfelt truth to it. The nice thing about learning tricks, whether they be juggling tricks or magic tricks, is that you can put the attention on what you're doing and move it off yourself a little bit. Now that's the bad thing about magic and juggling when you get established, but it's the very good thing when you're starting out. I mean, a magic trick done badly, the very low level of a magic trick still has a certain amount of intellectual content, and there's automatically irony. You perceive things one way and know in your heart they're another way, and it automatically has surprise built in. So you can get a little bit of attention doing that. Now I had no interest in magic when I was a child, and for a very specific reason. I started to juggle. I was 12 years old, and I was living in Greenfield, Massachusetts, which is a little dead factory town in northwestern Massachusetts, and right on the border of Vermont. And I was really interested in music and art and reading, and I loved all that stuff. And my town didn't offer any of that. And I didn't seem to have very much musical talent. And there was no sort of theater or stage. I mean, the first person I met in show business was me. I never talked to anyone after a show or before a show until I'd done a show. And I just thought that I would learn to juggle. So I taught myself, and then my next door neighbor was Mike Motion, who turned out to be the most important juggler in the 20th century. And although Mike Motion, I guess people know him, yeah. He won the MacArthur Genius Grant. And I like to remind everyone that I taught him to juggle, and he likes to deny that. Probably was insulin. And so we learned to juggle and practiced all the time. One skill I have is that I enjoy practicing. If you need someone to learn something, I'm happy to learn it. I'm not particularly fast study, but I will stick with something for a long time, and I can do things for hours and hours and hours. So I got to learn to juggle. And then I was a big fan of science. I was a very good student. And I was watching television, and I know for a fact it wasn't the Johnny Carson show, because Johnny would not allow him on. But a scumbag by the name of Amazing Kreskin was on a television show, and he was talking about what he called the science of ESP, and he demonstrated this experiment where in mind reading, and he presented it completely as an experiment and not as a trick. And I was very taken with that. I loved science and loved reading about science, and I believed everything he said, hook, line, and sinker. And I went to my parents, and who were not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, and asked them if they'd buy me this ESP test kit for home, this piece of shit. And my parents thought it was science. They had no reason to believe differently. It's what it said on the box and what he said on the TV show. And they bought it for me, and I spent a lot of time. My sister had moved out at that time, so it was just my parents and me. Spent a lot of time running these tricks that couldn't possibly work, because what I'd seen on TV was a lie. And then I was in the library, the Greenfield Public Library, and for those of you who remember the Dewey Decimal System, my whole life has been put together by the Dewey Decimal System. If you cast your mind back to how things are arranged, the 900s, of course, are religion. The 800s, of course, are things like juggling and magic. In a small library, I had religion, atheism, juggling, magic. And we might as well have said, never mind the Dewey Decimal System, we'll call this section Penn. So I was looking at juggling books, which we had. When I say books, it's correct. It was plural. There were two of them. I was looking at the juggling books again in the library, and next to them was a book by Dunninger, who was a magician who did mind-reading tricks in the 40s, huge superstar. And I was looking at his book of how the tricks are done, and at that moment, I stumbled upon the page that showed how the trick was done that Kreskin had done on TV. And it was life-changing, and not in a good way. I flop sweat, I was humiliated, I was embarrassed, I was filled with rage, I was sad. I went home to my parents and said that we had been tricked. I said that, a person had claimed they were doing science and they were actually lying, and scientists lied and magicians lied, and I hated them both forever. And I went from a straight A student to a failing student in the following 3 months. And I would not do anything in science because I considered everyone to be a liar. And I was filled with rage and embarrassment. And of course, looking back now and being a parent, of course, my parents thought nothing less of me because I had told them that this magic set was actually a science set. But for a child, it's not that simple. You don't understand parental love the way you will when you have children of your own. And so it was a really, really, really bad time for me. And I had no interest whatsoever. I had a little bit of interest in performing with the juggling, but after having seen Kreskin and the lies, I had no interest in ever going on stage and lying to anyone. And I became very interested in being a writer. I wanted to be a beat poet. I wanted to be Kerouac. I wanted to be Camus. I wanted to be Sartre. I wanted to move to France and write the great American novel that you're supposed to do in France. And Henry Miller and so on. And then I met Teller. I met Teller while I was still in high school. Teller's 7 years older than me, which is no age difference now, like you and I.
Yeah.
It's no age difference now, but when you're younger, it's a huge age difference.
Huge difference, yeah.
Huge. What are we apart?
Well, let's see. I'm
60.
I'm 56.
So we're closer together than Teller and I were. And Teller and Amazing Randy, who is a magician who then went to become a scientist and talking a lot about leading the skeptics movement. They told me something very, very profound. They had this idea, which was that you could lie within a proscenium and be a moral person. That it is crazy and it is wrong for someone to go out, for Robert Downey Jr. to go out and say that he's Iron Man is insane. Yeah. That is wrong. To say that he's an industrialist who made a lot of money is wrong and a liar. But if you do that in a movie, all of a sudden, it goes from the worst thing in the world to one of the best things in the world. Mm-hmm. And they explained to me that I would be able to do a magic show without lying. So from that moment on, all the passion that Kreskin had ripped away from me and all the joy of science and the joy of magic with those conversations with Amazing Randy and Teller came flooding back. And although I think if you woke me up in the middle of the night, because we sleep together, and said, "What do you do for a living?" I think I would probably answer writer, but I really do like performing the stuff that I write very, very much. And I love the fact that you can tell the truth in fantasy. And for me, that's the most beautiful thing about show business and art. So that's how I got from Greenfield, Massachusetts to Vegas.
So when I met you, you were juggling, and one of the things I remember, that you're a much better juggler than the show that you were doing. You were doing some fairly simple tricks in your show, but you had a way with the audience that just struck me that was very different than everybody else. And one of the things, the quotes I think you said, I overheard you say that a lot of entertainment are very disrespectful of the audience in the 20th century. And I wondered about your relationship to the audience. And I've never asked you this before, because you come out, if you guys get a chance to see their show at the Rio, or you've seen any of their shows, it's a sense that they've never done that show before. And yet I know from talking to him how hard they work. You have a new magic trick, and you should talk about that, a rabbit out of the hat. It seems on the surface a simple act of pulling a rabbit out of the hat, and yet they'll work on tricks for years at a time. And yet when he's in front of the audience, when they're in front of the audience, there's this incredible sense of it's a very fresh material. It doesn't feel like they've done it before. What do you attribute that to? Because you've been doing how many shows? I mean, you've done that show for how many years is it now at the Rio?
We're now, I believe, the longest running headliners in Vegas history.
That's awesome.
What are you doing now?
So
all I can say to that is, thank God a tiger bit fucking Roy's head off. My heart to Montecore. I mean, if that hadn't happened, they would have beat us forever. They had the lead on us, and then the tiger bit his fucking head off, and the whole thing changed. Do I need to add that I mean, I feel like I don't want to insult you, but I'm going to add this and say that Roy is a friend of mine. And I would do that joke in front of him, and I want to make that clear. I don't know why, because I'm sure you all knew that, but just to make sure you don't think I'm too much of a monster.
Well, these the folks in this room, you know, as many of you do, you do this a similar show, a program every time you go out. The music may change, just like your routines might change. But there's essentially a relationship with the audience. And I wonder if you talk about how you look at that. Because I came in, we went to the show last night, and you were signing autographs. And you're the only act, I believe, in Vegas that stands out in the lobby. And you greet everybody. Talk a little bit about when that started and why you keep that up, and that relationship of respect you have with your audience.
You know, every once in a while, a PR person after the show will come up and say, you know, this is the most brilliant marketing thing you do. You are out here, you meet everybody in your audience who wants to meet you. I want to make that clear. We don't force ourselves on people. If you want to walk on by, you can. So many articles have said they meet everyone in the audience, and I go, don't say that, because some people think there's places to go. But anyone who wants to meet us, we meet them, and we take pictures with them, and everybody's talking about how this is great marketing. It goes on Facebook, and it goes on Twitter, and so on.
A strategy approach. And
it does. There's no doubt about it, but that wasn't the reason for doing it. We started working, you know, we're essentially carny trash, and we started working outdoor shows with carny trash like this.
Yeah.
And there was no backstage area, so we had to be out there with the people, and it just got very comfortable. And even when we were playing small theaters, there wasn't really a backstage area, and we would go out and talk to people. And then when we made the move to Broadway, I guess that was the whole moment.
Which we'll give a year on that. So it'd be in 1981.
Yeah, 84 or 85, I guess. Glenn would know this, but I guess the dates don't matter exactly. 85, we were off Broadway, and we had quite a bit of success. And then a couple years later, we went on Broadway. So you're going from a 200-seat theater to a 1,000-seat theater, right. And you're going from, you know, very serious ads in the Village Voice to billboards in Times Square. And I think everybody just assumed we would stop greeting the audience afterwards. We'd stop hanging out with them. I used to go out during intermission and talk to folks, and we just didn't stop. And we played over, when we play over in England, we're actually fairly successful in England, maybe more successful in England than we are here. And we play, here we play 1,400 seats. We'll be playing New Orleans, I guess we're playing like 2,500 seats. But in London, we go to like 3,800 seats. And we really made it very, I think, important. We crossed an important line about 5 years ago, where the time after the show with people actually grew considerably longer than the time we were doing the show. So we'd start the show at 9, the show would be over at 10:30, and then we would finish signing autographs at about 12:15. So more than half our time was spent out there. And it's very funny because I have always liked people who like our show. Now, doesn't that seem obvious? You tend to like people who like you, but it is very, I guess uncommon is not accurate, but I am shocked by the number of people I've met in show business who actively do not like their audience. I was on Celebrity Apprentice with people who,
yeah.
And this is,
and I went just once or twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
And I certainly won't say names, and I won't give you enough detail to be able to figure it out. And also, please, just as a courtesy to me, don't try to figure it out. You know, I can ask that as a favor. Yeah. But some of the people on Celebrity Apprentice, when they would talk about their fans, and it did not seem like a pose. As a pose, it's bad enough. But if it's true, it's heartbreaking. They would show real scorn and disdain for their audience, judging them based simply on them liking the work that they did. And we would have people who would come to, you know, Celebrity Apprentice is a lot of begging for money for charity and begging for attention for yourself. And fans of each of ours would come to these events, which were difficult to find. You had to find them, and they were really the lifeblood of playing the game. And I found that the way some of the fans were treated by my colleagues, I found reprehensible. And I found myself down among the fans of other people. That is to say, fans who didn't like me were rooting for someone else, hanging out with them. Because I sincerely, and this is not jive at all, I enjoyed being with the people who came to see the people I was working with more than the people I was working with. And it's so odd. Yes, when you are out among people who've seen the show, you have the opportunity for people to say heartbreakingly mean things. But it's very, very rare. And I have been, and I don't mean to throw this out of proportion, this is out of 15,000 shows, I have been pushed and I've been grabbed and I've been hit by people who had differences of opinion with me, but never seriously. Those are the examples I can give you, 6, 7 examples out of whatever 10,000 times 1,000 would be. Somebody can figure that out. People who've come by me. Overwhelmingly, it's great, and we learned something that no one else in show business knows. I would talk to George Carlin, and he would complain about Vegas audiences being too quiet and not getting him. And I've had many people complain when I've been in the audience. We've seen friends of ours do a show.
Yeah.
We've been in the audience. We've loved the show, loved it, adored it. And the audience is a little quiet. And the person, you see them backstage and they go, oh, it wasn't a good show tonight. They were kind of quiet. Well, I've had the experience of having a really quiet audience. A really what you would call a dead audience.
An off night.
An off night. No, well, I didn't feel like I was off, but just a quiet audience.
Okay.
And then you feel bad at the end of the show, and then I would go out to meet people, and they would be, and this might be an illusion, but they would be more enthusiastic than the nights that people were cheering and screaming and yelling. And I look at myself, and when I go to see Bob Dylan, I don't like to applaud between songs because I'm afraid I might make too much noise and miss something he might say or do. When I am told, my wife reprimands me for this. When I'm really enjoying a show, I don't laugh. No, I don't smile. I don't applaud. I just...
Going to movies with you, we would do that. He would go to movies and this is the face.
You know, I want it to wash over me. I want everything. And so we've learned. Teller and I will do shows that are really quiet and go, great show. Felt really good about that. And you still want the feedback loop, but it's really wonderful. So we've found that being out among people is just wonderful. And I also think it set me up for being very comfortable on Twitter. You know, so many entertainers are terrified.
How many do you have now? How many?
Twitter, 2 million something.
2 million something, yeah.
But
2 million something.
I read about 200 tweets to me a day, and I answer all of them that are appropriate to answer. I don't answer ones that are obviously mentally ill, you know, trolling. And I also don't answer ones that are, too complimentary, because I just type thanks and I kind of get sheepish. But if there is a question that someone has, I like to answer it. You know, and this is bring up the Minnesota stuff, you know. When you're out there with people after the show, there's a certain kind of gentle, natural quality that happens. It's wonderful. If you come to see our show, and the whole show you got a rock in your shoe that was I the guy you saw juggling at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival in '76. And you're trying to think where you saw me before. And somehow it didn't hit you on TV, but it's hitting you on stage. I think I saw that guy. I think it was in Minnesota. I think I saw that guy. And it's just like a rock in your shoe. Did I see that guy in Minnesota? I don't know. Well, if I'm not out after the show, what are you going to do? Try to get in touch with me through a website or wait after me up on my car? It's not worth it. But being able to come up and just say, hey, liked your show. Were you at Minnesota in '76? Yes. Oh, good. The rock's out of your shoe.
So now, what do you consider show business? You know, this is backing up a bit. When we were in a drive, and you probably don't remember this because it was long hours. You keep in mind there were three of us driving in a Dodge Aspen from Minnesota to Houston, and I wasn't sure what we were going to do during that whole trip because I didn't have the right music. I knew that. But we talked a lot, and Penn would turn on, we would turn on AM radio station preachers to listen to AM, you know, mid-America, sort of the born-again preachers on AM radio, and discuss religion and science. And it was incredibly entertaining and funny, the stuff that we covered. But one of the things you talked about was this respect for show business, and you know, it seems like there's a sort of arrogance about, you know, magicians are the bottom of the rung of show business. Nightclub DJs. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's just okay. Yeah, mimes. Well, it's true. Fucking mimes are below.
Someone to kick.
That's right.
Magicians, you know, mimes, hypnotists, balloon animals, jugglers, magicians, everybody else in the world.
Well, you shared a stage with a mime. You didn't kill him.
No, I didn't.
No. But so what do you consider show business? I mean, the two words together mean show, and there's business involved. But what is show business at the core of it? What makes show business?
I think that most times, for useful thought, defining words in their most limited way is a very, very useful technique. I mean, in science, once you can name something and really define it, you've made a huge step. You know, the taxonomy is very, very important in that. But show business and art are terms that I find become more useful the more you expand them. In my heart, very much want to be a snob. I want to be a music snob. I want to be a comedy snob. But it's really difficult to do that because there's beautiful, high quality art that's being done in every aspect of performance. Duke Ellington said there are two kinds of music, good and bad. I think that that's what becomes, I mean, Andy Warhol said, I've thought about this a bit, Andy Warhol said art is whatever you can get away with. And then the Residents, who are an avant-garde art and music collective in San Francisco, said Warhol was wrong because you can even get away with it after you're dead. So it's broader than Warhol said. Teller, I think, has the best definition of art. And I believe that show business and art are synonymous. Mm-hmm. Teller said art is whatever we do after the chores are done. If you're not feeding people or clothing them, if you're not working in medicine, if you're not working directly in transportation, you're in show business. And what we're finding out in the 21st century is that as more and more things get automated, more and more people are in show business. So I believe, and Billy West, who is the great voice actor, he's the Red M&M. He was also Ren and Stimpy. He's also Futurama. Billy West is the best voice guy alive. Billy West said there's one show business. And in that one show business, there is Jay Leno. But there's also Bach. And there's also Ron Jeremy. And there's also the guy who's dressed as Santa Claus at the mall. And there's also anyone who makes a decision on what people listen to. Any DJ, any time, in any room. There is also anyone who play, professional wrestling.
Right.
Anyone who writes a blog, anyone who writes for the New York Times. Right. I believe that's all show business, because show business is after the chores are done, is there any way you can share what's in your heart with another human being?
With what you're doing, whatever you're...
Yeah. By any way you share what's in your heart with another human being is the closer you come to show business. And if you can do that with as little lying as possible and with as much compassion as possible, then you get into the areas of stuff that's going to touch more people and is more beautiful.
Would you think, now, getting back, we were talking a little while ago about sort of lack of a better term, sort of staying awake to performance, like kind of being present. How much of a challenge is that for you, given how many times you've done these shows over and over again, to really stay connected when you walk out? So you can do some of the routines you do. You could do on autopilot. I mean,
I've done the show with 104 fever. I've done the show going into the wings to vomit. I've done the show with pneumonia. I've done the show with broken bones. I've done the show with EKG pads all over me. Well, they thought I was having a heart attack, with medics in an ambulance backstage checking me between every bit and then immediately putting me from the stage into the ambulance. I've done it while hallucinating. I've done it not recreationally, but on fever and other things. I've done it the day my mother died, the day my father died, and the day my sister died. I was on stage that night. I have done shows I don't remember walking on stage or walking off stage or anything that happened during it. I've done a lot of shows. I have done probably close to as many shows as days as I've been alive. I've done it a lot. I've never had a recreational drug or alcohol in my life, but I've done the show on Percodan and Percocet. I've done the show on codeine, heavy doses of codeine. So I've done the show as though I were Keith Richards, but still being able to lie and say I've not done drugs. I try very hard to be present, as you said.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's as important as everybody says it is in show business. I may be the only one who believes this. I believe very strongly in muscle memory and developing a really good autopilot. I believe that if you can't do your show while thinking about your laundry, you can't do your show. I believe that the writing and the practice and the work and the repetition, we live in a time when novelty is often conflated with creation. The Stones, Rolling Stones, did 5 albums in their career. Those 5 albums were hidden among 60 albums or 40 albums, whatever they did. Every 4 or 5 albums, they would do a new album. Sticky Fingers, Between the Buttons, Some Girls. And then in between, they would do the same kind of record again. Once again, Andy Warhol said, if you're going to do pretty much the same situation comedy every week, why don't you do the exact same situation comedy every week and get good at it? I remember seeing
that's really incredible.
The first episode of Saturday Night Live, the very first episode with George Carlin hosting. And my overwhelming feeling about it was, boy, I want these guys to do this another 100 times. And then I want to see it. There's a kind of beauty you get in repetition. We are old enough, I'm 60, to know a few old timers from show business. Very few of them left, but I got to know many of them when I was much, much younger. Jugglers like Bobby May, magicians like Billy McComb, Jay Marshall. These are guys who put together 12 minutes. They put together 12 minutes when they were 19. 12 minutes when they were 19. And they were doing those 12 minutes when they were 75. The same 12 minutes. And I swear to you, they got better every year. And part of that was going with the autopilot. There's this feeling that we get with improvisation, that when we're improvising, and I'm standing up here and going, where are you from? Get that bottle of water, that's the purse, You do that kind of stuff. There's this sense, this lie, that you are more in touch with the audience. So when I grab your purse and go through it and say, what do you got in here, turtle shit? And go through that I'm in touch with you and I'm with you. I think that's a complete and utter lie. When you are on stage improvising, when you don't know exactly what you're going to say next, when you don't know exactly what the next thing you're going to do is, you have no awareness of the audience whatsoever. If I were doing prepared material in this room, if I were standing up and I were going into my fire eating routine, or I were going into one of the Penn and Teller bits, as I was doing the bit, I know what the next 10 minutes is, word for word. I know when I'm going to breathe. I know when I'm going to scratch my nose. I know when I'm going to pull my coat down like this. It is exactly the same. And because I know all that, that goes to autopilot. And when that goes to autopilot, I know the color of your shirt, and I know the last time you laughed. And I knew this guy's got his arms crossed over here. All the stuff I can't see when I'm improvising because I'm just trying to save my ass. That's all I'm trying to do. When's the next joke? Get a laugh every 20 seconds, big laugh every minute and a half. Follow that vaudeville grind. Make it happen. And do that improvisationally is a little bit harder. So I try to forgive myself. When I catch myself on stage having done that feeling you all get when you're driving and you've just driven 5 miles and you know that you drove safely, but you don't know how you got there.
Yeah.
You know, we all have that. And you're not driving, I'm not saying that this is not like texting where your mind is on something else. Your mind is on driving, but there's a certain kind of consciousness that the remembering self isn't holding on to.
Right.
I believe I have done very, very good, if not shows, sections of shows, while not being completely aware of where I am.
Right.
But I'm always happy. I always like being there. I always enjoy it. But I believe that it's really important to do stuff a zillion times. When we first did the water tank, there's a trick that we do in Penn and Teller where Teller's in like a phone booth full of water, and I'm doing a card trick. And the gag is he can't get out of the phone booth and breathe until I find the selected card. He's going to hold his breath for 5 minutes, then I'll find the card, but I'm sure it's their card, their signed card. I will go with a key, let him out. He'll pop out of the thing and he'll breathe and everything will be fine. And the way the gag is structured is at 5 minutes I screw up the trick, I lose the card, I go for to try to let him out. He won't let me because he has the integrity not to do that, wants me to finish the trick. I finish the trick, he then changes his mind, tries to get my attention, fails. He drowns in the tank, he dies. I can't find the card appears on Teller's face in the mask while he's dead in the tank. That's the gag on it. Now, the first time we did that on Saturday Night Live. And it's a very, very...
You remember the years now? No, you know.
I don't know, 87, 88.
You started Saturday Night Live quite early, right? Early.
Yeah, I would not, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't do TV until I turned 30.
Okay.
So the week I turned 30, I did Letterman, Saturday Night Live, and another show that week.
Okay.
So it was early then. It was, so I turned 30 in 85, so it would have been probably 86. We did that trick. Now, it's a really hard trick. The magic in it is tremendously hard, and artistically it's pretty hard because you've got 3 beats running and 3 different intentions that are going through this. You know, you've got what the audience expects, what they think Teller's thinking, what they think I'm thinking. It has to go together, plus an audience member we're doing this with. So it's a complicated trick, a lot of rehearsal, but very, very difficult. Now, I'm on TV, so there's 12 cameras on Saturday Night Live, and I have a moment where I'm standing next to the tank and I have the key. The key's in my hand and I'm gonna let Teller out and he's gonna breathe. And Teller's looking face front and I'm looking 3/4 to the audience, okay? So this is the orientation. Now, the audience member's right over there and I'm gonna say to the person, is that your card? I'm acting as though I expect that to be the card. It's gonna be yes, and I'm gonna turn the key and let Teller out. That's the expectation. I say, is that your card? With a great deal of joy and excitement. And the person says, no. And I say, no, really, is that your card? And the person says, no. Then I'm standing on stage, Teller's straight front, I'm looking to the side, and I'm gonna do this. And I'm gonna look Teller in the eye with this much movement. I'm looking there, and I'm gonna go here. Okay, now that is the moment when the whole trick turns, and that is a huge laugh moment. Big laugh moment, and that is where the bit becomes, I mean, forgive me for saying this, but becomes from a standard magic act to our style. Our style is going to be something screws up, and it's going to have a cataclysmic reaction, right? So that's the moment. Now, I've got 12 cameras on me, okay? There's a camera there, camera there, camera there, all over. And there's a camera right here, and the camera's got my face this tight, okay? And it's time to do that moment, and I go, and I do a full head turn, okay? We're talking about this much movement, okay? On a screen, that's huge. And I get the laugh, and it plays great, it's wonderful, and the bit was successful. Then we put this bit in our show. Then we put the bit in the show, and I start doing it, really doing it. And it starts going in every night. And now we're banging 250, 275 shows a year doing the water tank. And it's the same bit. So 275 times a year for a couple of years, you know, I'm doing this. You know, and now I don't have 12 cameras around me. Now I have 1,500 people. So there's people in the balcony that I'm just a little dot, right? They're way up there. They're really far away. Fifth Tennessee Theater is a big theater, really far away. And I realize after 3 years, when we go from that person there to teller, the audience in the balcony is now seeing this. That's what it's gone to. It's at the maximum a quarter of an inch and eyes, and they can't possibly see it, right? And the laugh is 5 times as great, enormous laugh. The bit has this depth and this subtlety and this gentleness that crosses over to a kind of communication that is what I live for in performing, because I have stripped that down to the audience actually identifying with the trick so much that at that moment they know so much about Teller and Penn in this bit. They know so much about the way the bit's going. They know where the disappointment is, that the person in the back row of the balcony, what they saw was this. You know, they saw a full body
But you're
turn.
not actually doing that.
Because it's all just in their mind. So what I worry about is, with so much emphasis, with television just eating material, and with the internet eating material, that we have to find places where we can do things over and over and over again until we know how to do them. Because I swear to you, there is no shortcut. There is no amount of willpower I could have that would have allowed me on Saturday Night Live that first time through to trust enough to go like this. So the funny thing is, the stuff you do on TV is big and gross and big movements, and the stuff you do live can be very subtle and very gentle, and in a room with people, really knowing your material and really feeling it, you can communicate. So, sometimes, Carr, I want to be really, really present. And sometimes it's okay to just be well rehearsed.
And good at what you
Yeah.
do. Yeah. That's an awesome answer. Now,
By the way, you're on question 3. This is question 3.
yeah, no, yeah. I'm all over the place.
I'm just saying we're kind of going long on these.
Yeah, that's all right. There's a quote, I've had this one, where it said, "There's a tremendous amount of arrogance and hubris where somebody can look at something for 5 minutes and just dismiss it. Whether you talk about gaming or 20th century classical music, you can't do it in 5 minutes. You can't listen to The Rite of Spring once and understand what Stravinsky was all about." Tell me a little bit about what that was.
One of the things, first of all, I
think we tend to, people here, you all know that you dismiss certain music as being, trite and stupid, and we sort of have this a sense that certain music is good and the other stuff sucks, and there's kind of arrogance to the way we.
Yeah, there's a rule that Teller and I try to follow, and we fail. We fail at this all the time. I don't think we've ever followed it successfully, but as an ideal, I try to follow the rule that with any piece of art, and I separate this very much with art and not stuff outside of art, because outside of art, there needs to be an objective reality for us to live. But within art, I try to follow the rule that whoever likes something is right.
Really?
Yeah. Try to follow that rule, that whoever likes something is right. Because that's the way you learn stuff. You know, if you're going to go see professional wrestling and you're not into professional wrestling, going with someone who loves it is a really good way to find what's beautiful about that. And I've had some of the greatest experiences of my life have been someone leading me through a kind of music that I don't like at all. I've never been a fan of country western music. But someone that sits you down and plays David Allan Coe and Willie Nelson and some Waylon Jennings and some Merle Haggard and picks that stuff exactly right. I had a friend just sending me stuff that of which you guys probably know very well, but electronic dance music, where you and trance and club mixes and stuff. There's a lot to learn about that, and you have to be so often. I won't talk about other people. There's no reason to. I'll talk about me in this because I'm the one that's guilty. I often confuse ignorance for taste, and that's a mistake that hurts me. Just because I don't know something's good doesn't mean it isn't good.
Right.
And some of the stuff that I enjoy the most now, and the examples I use there, 20th century classical music is hard for me. It's really, really hard. But I had a friend who kind of took me by the hand and got me through the Berg and the Schoenberg and the Stravinsky and the I was listening to 12-tone German opera and loving it, Alban Berg stuff. And I try to apply that to we obviously don't have the lifespans, unless we're in Groundhog Day. Which is, did you know that in Groundhog Day, they consider that movie, that day, to have been 20,000 years? That's how many years he was going through that same thing.
Really?
Yeah. The writer, Harold Ramis, said that, about 20,000 years. That to me is heaven.
But the same thing over and over and over.
Michael Goudot, great juggler, used to work with Lance Burton, now works with me and a lot of stuff. Michael Goudot said, the variety arts are a form for people who see the movie Groundhog Day and say, wow, that looks great. The idea of being able to be good at something is really, really wonderful to me. I would love to be able to, practice when I pick up this bottle of water 1,000 times. I love that kind of stuff. But I think in terms of an audience, obviously we must choose things. Taste and choosing and judging is what we are in life. We have to do that all the time. But it's really wonderful every once in a while to pick a form of art that you loathe and try to find the stuff that's great in it.
Well, I sat at a dinner table across from you. It was a few years ago. You were in Minneapolis for something, and somebody was talking about Bob Dylan. Now, if you know anything about Penn, you love Bob Dylan. And somebody made the comment at the table about a new album that came out. Said, I think the new album kind of sucked. Why would you like that? And you had an interesting answer. I love everything he does. And what you wanted to do, and I think this is useful for here, is to find a way to look at an artist that you like, and to get to know it so well that you, rather than dismiss it as something you don't like, what is it that this artist is about?
That's a thing that I kind of miss. The internet, I've got nothing but good to say about the future. I love living now. I would never go back in time for anything. I only want to go to the future. I'm envious of my children for the joys and wonders that they will see. The world is just getting better, and if you have any doubt about that, read Steven Pinker's book on Better Angels. It's there in black and white in numbers.
Yep.
It's the world's just getting better. That having been said, one thing that I'm a little sad that my son won't get to do as much as I did. My son, if he hears about Dion, can go on the web and type in Dion and listen to those songs. He can pick out the hits, go to Spotify, do anything he wants. But I used to buy albums, and I would buy albums by someone I loved, and I would not have heard the songs on. I couldn't sample it. I couldn't do anything.
Right.
I would listen to the album. And when Bob Dylan would put out a new album, Nashville Skyline, when I was just a child,
right.
Why was he doing a country album? This is awful. But I spent my allowance on it. So I had to listen to it over and over again. And I had to listen to the whole album. When you listen to Blonde on Blonde, the Bob Dylan album, you can't get up every time and skip over Lily Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts just because it's the weak song on the album. You play it through because it's too much of a pain in the ass to get up and move the arm. So you ended up liking things you didn't like. And I still do that. I still have a few artists, not many. I will guarantee you that I will like any record Bob Dylan puts out. And I say that with pride because I have decided that I want to journey in my artistic life with Bob Dylan. And if he learned something and explored something, discovered something down that path, I want to go with him. I don't want to judge him. I don't want to be a guy writing in the New York Times that says, B+. He worked fucking 2 years of his life and it's a B+ because some of the vocals are weak on the second side. Fuck you in the neck. I want to listen to that and try to see what was in Bob Dylan's heart when he did that.
Right.
And I've tried to do that with, I did that with Lou Reed, with Bob Dylan. I try to do that with Bach. I try to go, well, I don't like St. Matthew's Passion. I'm not a religious man, but what's there in the music? By the way, St. Matthew's Passion by Bach is what Kerouac was listening to when he was on speed riding on the road, just typing on that scroll that went, it was St. Matthew's Passion in the background. So Kerouac listens to St. Matthew's Passion. Bach, the finest musical mind that ever lived, wrote St. Matthew's Passion, and I've got a problem with it? Who the fuck am I? Yeah, there's some stuff that's good that you should just know. If you have not read Moby Dick, or you've read Moby Dick then didn't like it, you are wrong. Read it again.
So, when we talked yesterday a little bit about kind of, when you're in business and you're focusing on just the business, that there's a way to create a business that has art to it, that wherever you guys are doing what you're doing, that you can really bring some of that into your work and invite it in while you're still perfecting all of the skills. And I wanted to ask you, just briefly before we go, when you think back in those early days in New York, what was it about New York at that time and the music? Because everybody in here is really, it's all about music. What were those artists about? What really just inspired you about New York in the 70s? And who were some of the artists that that got you jacked up and that you still consider seminal in your life?
I tend to like things a little more conceptual. I like there to be an idea about it. I really don't like sound and fury signifying nothing. In the mid-70s, when I was very, very much into music, all of a sudden music got very, very sterile and people got very, very good at it. You had bands like the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac and those kinds of bands who were very technically wonderful, but it didn't have any heart. And then the Ramones came and my whole world changed. Jonathan Richman, the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, the Clash were people who the right thing in their heart meant more than the exact right note. And you want two things out of art. You want crazy, 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 and you want pure skill. And the job of anybody, and I don't care whether you're a mall Santa Claus or whether you're Bob Dylan, what you're always trying to do is let your heart go wild, go mad, be Kerouac, and then have the skills of Charlie Parker. You want to put those two things together and smash them together as hard as you can. And most times in art, we only get one. We get a crazy person being sloppy, and we love that. Or we get a really skilled person not showing all of their heart. And what we should go for at every level of show business, whether we are just a mall Santa or whether we are Picasso, we should go to be wild and skilled and love everybody we're talking to.
It's time for us to wrap up here, and first of all, I want to thank you for coming here. This is such, you guys, this is such a joy for me to be on stage with my friend. And you can find, obviously, Penn's great books. If you're interested more, if you don't know a lot about him, he's got some great books out. His most recent one Atheist.
Every Day is an Atheist
Every Day is
Holiday.
an Atheist Holiday is a terrific read. Is a terrific read, but there's also a lot about show business. It's really just a terrific book. Also, every Sunday, or you can get it on iTunes, is Penn Sunday School, where they talk an hour and a half, I think, every week about all of this stuff. It's very entertaining, and you can find them at the Rio. Go ahead and say what is it's a Rio.
Rio All Suites Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada.
As I say,
The Penn Jillette Theater is in LA.
But on behalf of everybody here and the folks that brought you in, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Penn Jillette.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Carl Hageman and Penn Jillette. Come on now. Come on now. Hey.